Today, we have the CEO and president, Mike Darrow from TrueCar.
This is Auto Collabs.
And coming from the dealer side of the industry, I will say that a lot of times when things, words that rhyme with Mubar, like TrueCar, come out of people's mouths, there's a little bit of like recoil, right? They got, And I'm really excited about today's conversation because I think what happens is when we start to meet the guy from 105, the guy from the apartment 105, that guy that never throws his trash out. But when you meet Steve from 105, all of a sudden Steve, and not just Steve, but like his apartment, all become more approachable. And I'm just excited to kind of hear and gain the insights of what TrueCar is doing, what they're seeing in the industry, because they do have so much data. They touch so many different places in the automotive, in the retail automotive industry. And I think that, getting to know the guy from 105 is important, even from a guy that comes from the dealer side.
Yeah, I guess this is the second TrueCar CEO that I'm going to get to have a conversation with, getting to know Chip Perry a little bit. Well, I'm sorry, I'm just racking them up. But I remember meeting Chip Perry for the first time, and Chip came into TrueCar when they were in a pretty tumultuous period, and Chip literally went on a road show all over the country to sit and listen to dealers face to face, eye to eye, and say, what are your thoughts? Why do you feel that way? How can I help you in what you're trying to do in your community? It seems like Mike is carrying that torch really well. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that actually plays out.
Well, not only that, I've got his LinkedIn up in front of me. I'm really interested. I really hope he gives us some insight into just the scope of his career, because he's not a spring chicken in this industry. Like, he is a vet. He's been around for quite some time, but from so many different vantage points. Like, I'm seeing, Edmunds, and I'm seeing Nissan Motor Corporation, and I'm seeing, just like there's a lot going on here. And so, that coming up a scale like that, all the way to CEO and president of a company like TrueCar, he's seen some stuff. And I always love being able to sit and just listen to individuals like that. Of course, we hope you enjoy this conversation with Mike Darrow, the CEO of TrueCar, right here on Auto Collabs.
All right, we are hanging out today with Mike Darrow, president and CEO of TrueCar. Mike, thanks for joining us on Auto Collabs today.
Al, thanks for having me. It's great to be here and spend some time chatting with you guys about the business.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's start there, because right before this, I think a lot of people, they see things like president and CEO on companies or on titles, or especially at public traded companies. And it's like, that guy's way out there, it's, and sometimes you kind of get this kind of alter personality that is kind of quote unquote untouchable. But you just said to us, hey, I've been in the car business for quite some time, love talking about the business, just getting in the weeds. So take us back just a little bit, just for the listeners, on when it started all out for you in the automotive industry.
Yeah, I really, Kyle, been in the industry almost my entire adult life. I kind of fell into a job coming out of college. The young lady I was dating in college did some babysitting for the dean of admissions. And one Saturday night, we went to their house for dinner, and her husband was a Chrysler dealer. And he asked me if I had a job, after school. I said, well, I'm talking to some folks. He said, well, I just hired my Chrysler factory rep to come work at my store. I know they got to be hiring. Maybe you want to talk to Chrysler. And I said, sure. I was practicing my interview skills and doing all those things. I said, let's do it. Sent me in for an interview, got the job that day, and have never looked back since then. So it's been nearly 40 years. And first 20 of it on the wholesale side. I spent the first 3 with Chrysler, and then I jumped over to Nissan, spent 17 years there, and then 15 years with Edmunds, and then over here to TrueCar after that. So, it's been an unbelievable run. I love this business. I've seen it from a lot of different sides. In the OEM roles, I got to call on dealers, probably been in thousands of dealerships in my life. I did parts orders. I've signed warranty claims. I've shipped allocations. So I've seen it all across the board, and I love it. It's an exciting business, and one that once you're in it, I think it's really hard to get out of.
Yeah.
That's legit.
That is for sure. That is for sure. You know, one of the things that we're talking a lot in the industry right now is that times are like, they are crazy, right? We got chip, we got pandemic, we've got inventory shortages, potential electrification and potential agency model. All of these things are happening. They're crazy around us. But every time I get in conversations with the people that have been in the industry longer than 8 to 10 years, there's a perspective that people like yourself, I feel like, bring. And I'd love to kind of hear your perspective on how these challenges are maybe juxtaposed or in line with some of the things that you've seen throughout the industry and throughout time, and how like the approach of the way that, you know, that those things have been approached over time might impact the way that we need to be approaching some of the changes that are coming in our industry.
Yeah, and I've certainly seen a lot of these cycles, you know, come through the industry, and they tend to be a bit of a roller coaster. You know, I've seen high interest rates and low interest rates and high inventory levels and low inventory levels and big incentives and no incentives. And it's just, you know, the industry is amazingly responsive. And that's the thing I like about dealers are they're such entrepreneurial people that they just adjust to what's going on in the marketplace. But, you know, this chip shortage thing, I got to tell you guys, and you probably talked to a lot of people about it. It's really a crazy thing. I was reading not long ago the July report from Automotive News on sales. So Toyota sells 153,000 cars in July, which was down about 20% from the year before. But they have 14,000. They had 14,000 cars in their dealer inventory when the month ended. Just I can't even run that through my head to think they still. Now there's another 100,000 coming from the port, and there's some, you know, that are on their way to dealers. But and you guys see it. I mean, you drive past a dealer lot these days, and they've got the used cars parked in the front, like kind of sideways to take up more space.
Yep.
The hoods are up, the tailgates are down if it's trucks, right? I mean, it's crazy what they're doing. So, you know, and that has its ripple effect for us because our traffic's unbelievably good right now. I mean, you know, people have realized, I think, that the days of driving up to a dealership and walking the lot and seeing a couple hundred new cars and a couple of hundred used cars, that doesn't exist anymore. You know, you got to do your research. You got to get online. You got to try to find what you can find and then start, you know, your shopping process. So, you know, I think it's a really interesting time in that this chip shortage hit on the front end of this conversion to EV, right? And when we thought the chip shortage was going to be short term, you know, I thought it would cycle through and then we'd get back to this EV discussion. Now these things are starting to run together, right? You're starting to see these more electric vehicles come in. So I think it's going to be really interesting. And I'll tell you guys the honest to God's truth. I've got many friends still on the OEM side, and I still can't get an answer to where all the chips are or when they're coming. And I don't know that if it's they don't know or if it just doesn't do anybody any good to tell anyone. You know, maybe that's the reason he can't get the information on it. But
well, I think we're probably pretty certain that it's not good news.
Yeah, well, and the more I thought about it, and I talked to friends. I mean, I would talk to people who would usually give me an answer. And after I talked to them, I thought, well, if the real answer is 18 months, what's the benefit of telling anybody that? There really isn't.
Right. No, that's what I'm saying. If it was encouraging news, they'd want to be the first one to tell you. So,
that's
right,
exactly.
if it's 18 months, remember in the beginning, it was like, oh, it's going to be rough for 6 months. And then it was like the next year. And then probably like, it's going to be like 2 years. Remember, it just kept like exponentially growing. And then eventually everyone was finally like, you probably figured this out already, but we actually have no idea.
That's
right.
Yeah. Well, I think after they did their third revision, they felt okay saying we have no idea. They just started saying we're not sure. It's,
right. Like, what else are we going to do? Everybody was trying to be very optimistic.
Yeah.
Well, so you have a unique seat because you get to see a whole lot of data coming in as far as consumer behaviors and the traffic. What is different about this period in time? Are there any insights you can give us to the consumer traffic patterns or what people are actually doing, you know, how you're seeing them in the process multiple times, whatever? What can you help us understand, you know, if we're a dealer and we're saying, what are consumers doing? How can we understand them more?
Yeah. And we every quarter spend a couple of days talking to a few thousand of our customers as they flow through the system, trying to make sure we're staying current with issues. And, the underlying tone is, and it's been this way for a long time, that the actual process to buy a car at a dealership takes 4 or 5 hours on a weekend, maybe a couple of different days together. You got to spend the time. So what consumers are telling us is they want to pull as much of that online as they can, right? Let's pull some of this process online. Give me tools so that I can do more of my shopping and shorten that process. So, 65% of the people we talked to said they would be willing to do the majority of all the way up to the full purchase online. And I'll come back to that. We'll spin back to transacting online because we're working on some things there that are going to be really interesting for dealers. But right now, what consumers want is they want the ability to find a car, understand the price, get a real cash value for their trade, understand payment capabilities. Am I a lease buyer? Am I a payment buyer? I've got the average consumer, and one of the guys in our building has a great expression. There's no longer a 5-digit purchase. It's a 3-digit purchase, right? The car costing $37,000 is hard for people to understand. What they know is I've got $2,500 I can put down and I can pay $400 a month, right? So show me some cars that kind of meet those needs that fit my lifestyle, those sort of things. So that's what consumers tell us is give me more usable information online so that I can get as much of the deal done I can before going to the dealership. And you'll hear expressions, the new hot button in the industry is omni-channel, right? That's where you do part of the deal online, then you go into the store and finish it up. We've introduced a lot of tools that support the consumer on that. And then ultimately, we'd like to build, the full process online.
Do you find that the shopping behavior, at least in the data that you're seeing, are you seeing people begin and end their shopping journey at different places, especially when prices are so different? Are they starting more with price or payment, or is it still kind of a, recognition? Is it still early is type of vehicle and features and all that, and then moving into price and payment, and they're just wanting more of that information pulled into the online? Or is there a different shopping behavior at the front or back of the journey?
I think a lot of that depends on, the demographics you're trying to cater to. We took our traffic and we put it in, I think it was 8 different consumer personas or buckets of how people shop. What's happening right now is a lot of used car activity, right? New cars are scarce. So a lot of people are shopping used cars. And I think the used car buyer tends to be a little different than the new car buyer, right? If every 3 years you lease a 5 Series BMW, black on black, and you know what you want, that customer is easy to help, right? It's easy to help them get where they need to get to. The used car buyer oftentimes is a payment buyer, an affordability buyer, and they do want to pull some of the credit activities up front. They'll participate in a soft credit pull. They'll give you their data to see what they qualify for. So we do see on the used car side financing moving upstream. The other thing that's moved upstream is the trade-in. There's so much talk about we'll buy your car. Some of the vertically integrated used car players like Carvana and CarMax and Vroom, they're out there buying, used cars from folks and promoting that. So people want to know what their used car's worth right now and how that fits into their deal. The good news is used car values are really high. So people who didn't have equity or were in a tough spot on their used car in the past are usually in a good spot to trade right now.
I could see that actually being extremely helpful for dealers, especially from like a marketing or website perspective, in recognizing what are the key questions that most consumers are asking. And so if most consumers are wanting to move up, especially on used cars, wanting to move upward, the finance aspect or the trade aspect, then even changing something as simple as like a call to action on a VDP to highlight or prioritize those might actually make sense. Have you guys made any moves in the way that you ask people to bring information? Like, have you moved trade up in the consideration phase in the vehicle, even in like the way that shoppers are interacting on TrueCar?
Yeah, so we've broken the deal down into 4 phases. So you've got like the discovery and shopping phase, then you've got a deal building phase, then you've got a finance and paperwork phase, and then a delivery phase. So we've seen in that deal building phase, first thing people want to do is used car, get a value for their trade. And our data is running pretty consistent over the past few years. About 50% of the folks we talk to or come to our site have a trade in. So we get them on, get them an understanding of their trade. Our product's a guaranteed cash value for their number, so it can go right into a deal. We've built an electronic payoff tool where if the consumer gives us a little bit of data, we can go and get what their payoff is and then give them a net value for their trade, which is critical. If you're going to go from your trade to build a deal, you got to be able to make that, correlation there. So we've brought all those tools up front. The other thing we're working on is, and I think it'll really help the used car buyer. We've got, let's say, 1 million units on our site for people to shop through if you wanted to look at them. But a lot of those units aren't affordable for folks. So if you could pull the financing up front, you can actually tailor what you're showing them to cars that meet their budget, right? Mm-hmm. And you really eliminate that downstream frustration where you let them get on a car that they can't afford.
Yep.
Right. So
nothing worse.
Then all of a sudden they're in a credit app process. They're getting a turn down, right? Or they're getting heavy stips coming back at them is what needs to be done. So, we think early on, if you can do it in a way that the consumer feels you're helping them, if you can get that information from them and say, hey, understand your buying power, let us help you understand the type of cars that fit into your lifestyle and your budget. We think that's going to be important. So those are the two big trends we've seen: financing moving up, and people want to know what their used car's worth.
There's really. Oh, go ahead, Michael.
I was just going to say, this really underscores one of those simple tweaks to the process that will alleviate, I think, a lot of the negative stigma that consumer feels towards car dealer by simply giving them more information up front. Are you seeing any trend in that direction where by moving some of these facets further upstream, that it's alleviating the stress, the anxiety, and overall perception of how they felt going into the deal?
Yeah, we hear that quite a bit. And the good news is we hear it from both sides of the equation, right? So, we call ourselves a two-sided marketplace. We sit in the middle between demand and supply. We try to pay equal attention to both sides. All the demand in the world, if you don't have dealers providing supply and wanting to be on your platform's no good, right? And we could have all the supply in the world. If we don't have any shoppers, we're not helping any dealers that way either. So we really spend a lot of attention looking at both sides of it. And when people get values for us for their trade, for example, it takes a lot of pressure off the dealer. They don't feel they're getting lowballed, right? It's a third-party number, the guaranteed cash value we put on it, helping them through some of the discovery process. People tell us it's easier to do that in the anonymity and the comfort of your home rather than sitting with an F&I and saying, I'm not sure what I can afford, and going through that process and, those sort of things. So, we think with transparency, and that's the beauty of our platform. What we're trying to do, and we looked outside the automotive space for inspiration, right? But what's happened over the past, several years now is there's been these really cool modern day marketplaces that have popped up everywhere outside of our vertical. There's Expedia, Amazon, Grubhub. They've revolutionized the way people are consuming products. And when we started to look at them, what they really are is a combination of demand, supply, and some really cool technology to bring those two together, right? And that's what we want to build at TrueCar. And when you do this, we tell dealers, don't be afraid of the digital revolution. Let us bring you into it, right? Because we need you as part of this. We've got this demand every month. Let us bring your supply online, your pricing, your waterfall on credit, your insurance products, all those things, and let us make that connection with the consumer where they can do it right online. And we think the current buyers, people who have bought a number of cars, want to transition online. What I've tried to spend some time on, and I've got a son who's a senior at UCLA, These new buyers that are coming into the marketplace, they buy everything on their phone. I mean, everything. So I think the automotive industry has to think about how to participate in that, right? I tell a story. I was at the mall doing a brunch with my family one Sunday, and afterwards, my wife and daughter went in one direction. My son and I went in another. We walked past the Nike store, and he's one of those tennis shoe geeks, right? He's probably got 75 pairs of tennis shoes. He's got more tennis shoes now than I've had my whole life, right? So yeah, he loves tennis shoes. He's got a different set of tennis shoes for no matter what he's doing. So we walked past this Nike store, and man, the music's blasting, the lights are flashing, the people are dressed up. They built this store for his demographic. You could just tell. And I said, hey, Nick, let's go in and look at tennis shoes. He said, Dad, why would I do that? I go, what do you mean? There's a big, look at them. They're all on the wall. He goes, hey, I'll go home. I'll get my computer out. I'll find what I want. I'll order 3 pairs. I'll keep the ones I want and send the other ones back.
He's actually like, oh yeah, I saw what they had. I just bought it on my phone. It'll be at my house.
It was like a watershed moment. It was like, these kids, they're different, man. They're just, everything's at their hands.
Paul and Kyle have changed shoes 4 times just during this conversation.
I have the interview. I slip them on and off. That's what I do.
There he goes. You're right. Well, see, this just validates the whole point.
I know.
Well, shoes and hats. I see the hats.
I'm probably a little older than your son, though. Maybe not. Maybe he's a late bloomer. So I think easy from the retail standpoint, I love the thinking behind like, hey, let's emulate retail, right? Because as dealers, we're retailers, we're not car people, like and think and recontextualize everything we're doing through the retail lens makes a whole lot of sense. But some things are just kind of inherently human. And I'm always intrigued when I hear companies still paying attention to the human element of like community building, giving back. It's something that dealers are so well known for the people that know them and if like pay attention. Like if dealers were pulled out of communities everywhere, everyone would all of a sudden realize how much dealers actually sow into the community. And you all at TrueCar, you do quite a few things around veterans that I think are really notable. And maybe you could talk a little bit on some of the things initiatives that you have where you are investing in communities. There you go. Right, True. He's got the hat all teed up, talking about us in the hats.
You gave me the
You've been warned.
So I put it on.
You're like, you better show up with a black hat if you're going to go into this meeting. No, but maybe you could talk about that a little because I think that inherently is one of the pieces of glue that can help tie industry partners and dealers even closer together as we put on a kind of a united front to the general consumer public, saying like, hey, the car business cares about people. So what are you all doing right now?
Yeah, it does, and we. Our connection to the military community started many, many years ago with a partnership with USAA. And they're an amazing organization in supporting the military community. We powered an automotive buying channel for them and really got to get involved and experience that. And we've built out what I believe to be a really authentic military channel where we go to our OEM partners. All of them have special military incentives. We ask them to run some other incentives, particularly for the folks who are shopping the military channel on our site. We have a Driven to Drive program where we donate 2 vehicles a year to disabled Americans vets with the DAV. And it's just an amazing thing. And it's really at the core of what we've become. We try to be really authentic around this. And, it's important. Transportation is freedom, right? When you think about it, we get out, we get to get in our car, we drive around. I mean, here in California, God willing, I get to go to the beach, all those things. And what we heard from veterans were the loss of that freedom when they come back with a situation where they've been wounded. So, we've got a real authentic Driven to Drive program. We've got programs with Team RWB. We're doing some things with you guys around your 9/11 event. We're excited about and all the things, and congratulations for the things you do there. But it's amazing. This is one we have 3 or 4 of our own, the people who run this channel for us, and this was one of my absolutes. Our former vets were in the military. You got to be authentic if you're going to do this, right? I mean, you got to stay core to what you're really trying to do.
Can't fake it.
we've stayed very focused on that. And, we also are trying to drive some other things. We're sponsors of Women in Automotive. We're sponsors of NAMAD and the minority dealer programs going on. I think one of the challenges our industry's faced is over time, we're getting more diverse, but we just haven't been a diverse, industry from that perspective, particularly on the OEM side. And I know Mary Barr is changing that a bit, but for my 20 years in OEM, I'd go to the cocktail party and it'd be, 95%, middle-aged guys in gray suits. And I think that limits innovation, right? If you're going to cater, if you're going to service a full community, you got to have people in your organization who understand at the core those communities. I remember not too long ago, and there's many situations I've been in that remind me of this, but I got a pitch on how to market to women by like 5 dudes. Right, they walked into my office there, and I'm going like, seriously, we're missing something here. Now, these guys were smart; they did their research, but it just didn't feel authentic. You need to be real about this stuff, and I think our industry needs to lean more into that. We need to be more diverse. We need to bring more diverse thinking into the way we approach the business, and we're always trying to do that and making sure we're focused on it.
Well, no one here is arguing with that at all. Mike Darrow, thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule. I know you have a lot of things that you're in the middle of. On behalf of Michael Cirillo, Kyle Mountseer, and myself, thanks for joining us at Auto Collabs.
Thanks for having me, guys. It was great talking to you. And, hey, anytime you got an open spot, give me a call. I love chatting with you guys.
Certainly will. Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
So here we have, he didn't disappoint. He gave us a lot of context about his upbringing in the automotive industry. Very clear to me how passionate he is about this space,
clear.
Like he said at one point, it's really not easy to get out of the car business. But I think if we're all being honest, it's because we just fall so deeply in love with it,
That's right.
But what also really inspired me is here we are sitting with the president and CEO of TrueCar. And Mike says something that we've all heard and probably have admitted to ourselves. I fell into the business. And you know what I wrote down in my notes? Falls into business. And then in all caps, I wrote opportunity ? Because we're always wondering, can you make a career here? Dude fell into the business.
He was at a dinner party.
Yeah.
He's at a dinner party and then was the CEO. Right. Exactly.
40 years later.
Right. Boom.
Yeah,
40 years later. Right?
Overnight success.
Well, and here's what I love about this, because we go from, and I think this is so true of so many in our industry, that it's like, all right, I know all the data that's happening outside of TrueCar. Boom, I read automotive news. I know that Toyota's dealing with this type of stuff. Also, let me tell you about exactly how we serve dealers, how we serve customers, how the integrated data shopper journeys, also community, right? And it's like, if you ask the majority of people to get on a business podcast and go through those 3 things in 22 minutes, it would shock them. But for automotive people, it's like, yeah, boom, full news, product, community, let's go, And he ends with this line that was transportation is freedom. And I think that as an industry, sometimes we forget that and we just think transportation is transaction. And so I think it's just an encouragement to me that transportation is freedom, that we're giving people the capacity for freedom.
Yeah, I really always get encouraged when someone who is leading a big organization, which obviously has a lot of legacy, a lot of responsibility to a lot of people, right? So it's not only dealers, consumers, but a big staff, right? And there's just a lot of pressure to meet like such a regular guy at the helm. It just immediately makes me feel like, oh, I understand why people like him, right? Like I understand why people in the organization follow him, right? Somebody who can speak, it feels very automotive to me, right? Because you think of how many billionaires, right? And if you're in automotive, if you're listening to this and you're not in automotive, this might come across as braggadocious, but if you're in automotive, you understand. I'm like, how many billionaires do the 3 of us know? Right? Like a lot. And guess what? Most of them you would never know, because they're just regular guys and gals that are just at the Little League games, and it's not like full button up. So I think there's something just quintessentially auto about Mike, and I think that's why I enjoyed that interview so much. Looking forward to meeting him in person in sometime soon. But for now, on behalf of Michael Cirillo, Kyle Mountseer, and myself, thank you so much for listening to Auto Collabs.
Welcome to Auto Collabs. Why are we recording?
Are we rolling?